Hey, Geekscapists, we've got a brand new show for you coming up right now. Our good friend Kevin Jakubowski is on the show. He's no stranger to Geekscape. He was on Geekscape like 5-6 years ago talking about his brand new book, 8-Bit Christmas. Well, that book is now a film coming out on HBOMax this Wednesday. It's got Neil Patrick Harris in it. It's got a little bit of nostalgia. It's got a whole lot of Nintendo in it. And it's definitely what I'm going to be watching on Thanksgiving. Sorry, Hawkeye. I'll wait to watch the Hawkeye. But yeah, we've got a great Geekscape coming up right now. So strap yourselves in. This is going to be fun. Geekscapists, thank you for joining us. Thank you for, if you're listening to this on maybe your Stitcher or your Spotify or your Apple Music or your Apple iTunes or whatever it's called, whatever podcatcher you're listening to this on, thank you so much for joining us and choosing to make Geekscape like your favorite podcast. It really means a lot to me. We're about to celebrate 15 years of the Geekscape podcast. And you know what? If you're watching this live on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, well, thank you as well. The chat is open if you're watching this live. And you can also hit that little bell button to remind yourself when Geekscape is live or when Matt Kelly has put up a brand new video. These videos have been kicking ass. He's been doing great. You ever been like, oh, I want to know the history of the Addams Family? Well, that was a great video that they put up last week. The history of the Addams Family. Go to Geekscape TV over on YouTube and check that one out. That's a really damn good video. And we got a couple more surprises coming to the YouTube, but I really appreciate y'all sitting here every week and talking to me live for the show. And if you don't make it live, it's okay. It's all right. You're listening to it on the podcast, and you can hit that little share button, send it to your friends, and be like, oh my God, this show's been really good recently. And the listenership has reflected that. Last week, I had kickboxer and bloodsport filmmaker Mark DeSalle on. We were talking all about making bloodsport and kickboxer. That blew my mind. And we've got some great stuff coming up right here. If you're watching this, it's going to come up right here. On December 17th, we have a 15-hour live stream to benefit Big Brothers Big Sisters. That's a huge organization that we're really big supporters of, and we're really excited to do a 15-hour live stream. So, almost all of the podcasts are involved. We got 17 shows across the network. They're all jumping in to do some benefit. That's great. Matt Kelly's done a good job of scheduling that, and I got to tell you, the cherry on top. It had to be the cherry on top because we've been around for 15 years, and it's a 15-hour live stream. Geekscape's going live right here in Los Angeles. That's right. The tickets are $15, and you're going to get a 2-hour show. You're going to get an hour of Geekscape on stage. We got special guests. We got surprises. We got all sorts of stuff. We have some little bit of comedy. Why would we start 15 years? And then after Geekscape wraps, we've got our good friend Scott Klopfenstein doing a musical set with his 7-piece band. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a big party to celebrate 15 years of Geekscape and celebrate your support and all that. So if you're in Los Angeles, December 17th, please come and check out the surprises. There will be gifts. It's the holidays. You're going to get a gift if you come. And you can get tickets right here at tinyurl.com/Geekscape15. So mark your calendars if you're in Los Angeles. We'd love to see you. And of course, we'll be checking for the COVID. We'll be checking for the vaccination. I just got my booster. We're going to be rocking out there. So come hang out with us December 17th. It's going to be a fun show. Get your tickets at tinyurl.com/Geekscape15. All right. Any other little business? We got LA Comic Con coming up the 4th and 5th. Y'all will be there with us. If you're not there in person, you know I'm recording a bunch of our panels and putting them out on this very feed if you're listening to it on audio. If you're just watching live and you want to be a part of that, subscribe to the podcast. Take out your little phone, go to your little podcatcher or your Spotify, subscribe to the podcast. And when we go to LA Comic Con, we have a handful of panels. Some are really cool. We have a Geekscape Live. We have a fantasy storytelling panel. We have a panel. This one's awesome. we're going to take Marvel Masterworks cards from the mid-90s. Remember these? They had all the Marvel characters on them. And we're going to put them in a hat. And Matt Kelly is going to play the card master. And we're going to turn to him and say, we're going to have a panel of funny people who know their Marvel stuff. And we're going to say, card master, pull a card. And Matt Kelly's going to reach in there and he's going to pull out an old Marvel Masterworks card of an of a Marvel character that has not been in the MCU. This is like a derpy character, like a character that's kind of lame, right? And he's going to pull the card out and be like, oh, it's Longshot or something from the X-Men. And we're going to have to, as a panel, the think tank is going to be like, this is how I'd adapt that character into the MCU. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's one of the ridiculous panels we have for LA Comic-Con. If you're not there in person, that panel is going to be coming up right here on the feed. So subscribe. You want to know how we would bring in, some silly Marvel character to the MCU? There have been tons of them. And who knows? We'll see. All right. Comments are coming in, but I do want to get to my guest, Kevin. Bolt T says, here's to another 15 years. Let's go. Hey, man. Easy for you to say. I got to embarrass myself every day. But, it's not different than walking out in public. My buddy David Wilt is over on Facebook. He says, the plot of the upcoming movie 8-Bit Christmas sounds a lot like that old 80s movie, A Christmas Story. It's about this kid. He wants this Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas. That's what David said. And, well, maybe, buddy. Maybe that was a big influence. I can actually do something right now for you, David, to find out the answer to that very question. Like, was it influenced by the old 80s film, A Christmas Story? Well, that's easy. I've got the writer right here, so I might as well just bring him in and we can talk to him about that. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan. Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Kevin's been on the show before a few years ago. I think this is 2015.
Yeah. It's been a while.
You came on the show and you were like, this is my book. It's called 8-Bit Christmas. I'd really appreciate it if all of you would go out and read it. And it's a very personal story for me. It is about like how I wanted a Nintendo. That's all I wanted one Christmas. And we're like, a nice story, buddy. But you know what? We all wanted a Nintendo back then. But you know what? Our stories didn't get turned into an HBOMax movie coming out this Wednesday.
That's true.
That's insane. Dude, when I saw the trailer for this, I did like a double take and was like, where do I know that name? Where have I?
Well, you've been doing this for 15 years. You've had a lot of people on the show. You can't remember all. John.
Dude, in all honesty, what was great about it was I saw the trailer because we get all the press releases and stuff. And I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks like nostalgic fun. This just looks great. Very heartwarming. And then, because we're friends on Facebook, I saw you talking about how cool it was that this movie's finally coming out. And I went,
wait a second.
And I sent you a message and said, hey, Kevin, forgot how we met. You should come on Geekscape and promote the movie. And he said, Jonathan, I've been on Geekscape promoting the book that is now the HBO Max movie, 8-Bit Christmas. And I went, of course.
Oh man, it's all good. I could barely remember what I was doing yesterday, let alone 7 years ago.
Well, dude, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
It's good to catch up.
Yeah.
So 6 years ago or so, I think it was 6 years ago. 6 years ago, you were on the show talking 8-Bit Christmas. We were talking about, this is what was happening back in 2015 when Kevin came on the show. That episode of Geekscape also included our thoughts on the first trailer for The Force Awakens.
Wow.
So if you want a bit of a time capsule, we were giving our responses and like our feedback on the Force Awakens trailer when you came on the show last.
Wow.
And that,
what did everyone
nuts, right?
What did everyone think?
Oh, we were so excited. We thought this new trilogy was going to be better than the original. We were like, oh my goodness, how could this go wrong? It looks fantastic. What could possibly go wrong with this sequel trilogy? It's got all the cool stuff. It's got the explosions and the this and the that. And then now here we are. And let's maybe talk about your movie instead, because that's still sore with us. I think we were all very stoked. I remember Ben Dunn was very excited. Well, tell me, because you were on the show to talk about your book. And the book is still available, Geekscapists. If you want to be the person who like watches the HBO Max movie and was like, oh, I prefer the book.
Go ahead. I'll take it either way. Yeah.
Go ahead and read the book. But like, catch us up, dude, because you wrote the book. And then what happened from there? When you were on the show, were there talks when you were on the show that this was going to be a thing?
Yeah, I'd always, I am a film and TV writer, so I always envisioned this as becoming a movie at some point. I actually sort of reverse engineered it where I thought I would have a much better shot of selling this as a movie if I had a book first. I mean, as a writer yourself, like IP is so big and everybody wants, it's very hard to sell an original spec unless it's based on a comic book or or a book or a magazine article. So I had this idea that I'd always just really loved, and these characters that I really wanted to see come to life. And I didn't want to have it just sit on a studio shelf, even if it for 10 years and 15 people read it, and that's it. So this was a chance to have, to be honest, like total creative control over a book, which I loved. And so I had a few smaller offers to turn it into a film, after it was published in 2013, and just didn't really go anywhere. But there were two producers, a guy named Jonathan Sadowski, who's also an actor, and a guy named Nick Nantel, who had read the book and just loved it. And I just really clicked with them. They really wanted to make the movie that I wanted to make. I told them how I would adapt it, what I would cut, what I would put in, how I would tell the story, creating a narrator character that's looking back, and having him tell that story to his daughter, and how that dovetails with the story in the book, which is about a father and a son. And they loved it. And we pitched that take to a company called Star Thrower Entertainment. They had just done a really good little indie movie called Ingrid Goes West. And they had done The Post with Steven Spielberg, and they were setting up King Richard, which is out right now, the Will Smith movie. And they loved the pitch, and they optioned the book, and I wrote the script on spec. And then we attached this really great director named Michael Dowse, who had done some movies I'd loved, Goon, It's All Gone Pete Tong, which is an indie that I've always loved.
These are all really good indies. Like Ingrid Goes West, that Aubrey Plaza movie is really great. And then Goon got a sequel like that.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good hockey film.
It is. And it's like, it takes hockey seriously, and I'm a hockey guy, so that was always important. But and it's just got heart. Like, you don't really realize it, I think, because it's a pretty foul R-rated movie, but it's got a lot of heart to it. And Mike as a director was, I think just itching for something that could showcase his abilities to have a lot of heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what, connected him to the script. And then we took the script out with Mike attached, and ended up selling it to Warner Brothers.
And what's great about this is because the book is the story of like we're in 1985, 86, the Nintendo's come out, and we've had tons of great Nintendo conversations about the original SNES, or the original NES, sorry, the original 86 release of the 8-bit NES. And I don't know if you read Blake Harris's book Console Wars, about the war between, like, that is a fantastic book.
It is. I think that's how we got
Blake
connected
on the show.
I think that's how we got connected.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
So
I had met Blake, and he's like, you should meet Jonathan.
You should do Geekscape. This guy does this show in his mom's basement, and we should do it.
And then you should forget about it. You should forget about it for 7 years.
Jonathan doesn't remember.
And then just come back.
Yeah. So I love that era. I remember that era very well. I remember playing the game and trying to swing the controller. It wasn't until the Wii that it felt natural to swing the controller trying to move Mario. But what you added here, and it hit you when you got to the trailer, was that that kind of bookend sequence, or at least the narrator sequence that you've got here. That's more reminiscent of a different 80s movie than what we talked about earlier with Christmas Story. That is like The Princess Bride.
Yeah, it is a bit. Stand By Me, and
was that an idea that you had when you were writing the book, that when I adapt this, instead of just going full period piece, we open on early, Christmas or pre-Christmas 1986, was the narration and that whole kind of framing device something that you thought about before it was a book?
Yeah, I think so. if I remember correctly, I think so. And I think I thought about writing it that way for the book, but it just got a little complicated. It seemed more suited. It seemed more cinematic than anything. So that was a change from the book to the movie. But certainly, like Princess Bride, big influence, especially with that device. Sandlot, same thing. And obviously A Christmas Story. I mean, A Christmas Story, I won't beat around the bush, is my favorite movie of all time.
Whoa.
Like Gene Shepard, who wrote that, and just some really great books, has always been one of my favorites. He's a Midwest guy, and he was just able to, in a way that I think few other writers have, to capture youth and adolescence from an adult perspective that can be really sarcastic and funny, but also heartwarming. Kind of sneaks up on you. So I've always been a big fan of his.
What's funny too is our friend Zach was on the show right around the time you were on the show, and he plays Scott Furcus
no way,
in the Christmas Story.
Oh, cool.
And
cool.
So, I mean, Christmas Story is one of those movies that you quote well into adulthood. You think about it all the time, and it's in a period that you and I didn't even experience. I think that movie takes place in the 1950s.
It's now, I think it's the 30s actually.
You're right. It is in the 30s because he's got the Ovaltine, and the Wizard of Oz plays such a big part in that.
So I guess it's 1940 maybe.
So if that movie came out in the 80s, and 50 years earlier was the setting of that, now we've got 2021 in the HBOMax, and it takes place almost 40 years prior, which is insane to think about. That 1986 was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But I got to ask you, how much of the winter of 86, the Christmas of 86, is factual when it makes it into 8-Bit Christmas, the book and the movie, and how much of it was like, hey, this would be a great sequence, I'm going to add this little bit of alliteration?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think one of the advantages of having this narrator tell it to his daughter is that, problems I would run into, because they're problems like factual dates and things, they matter to me, as I'm sure they matter to you. Like, when did the Billy Ripken era card come out? Well, it's the 89 Fleer, but technically it's 88. And obviously Nintendo came out in 86, but it wasn't really big until like 87, 88.
Isn't that insane? I love that story about how they tricked the electronic stores with the Rob robot to carry them, because electronic stores were done with Nintendo.
Yeah. It's so crazy. And Blake's book was so great to talk about that, and just
incredible.
All that history. And so because it's a dad in this telling his daughter this story, like there's this element of, he's making a lot of this up, he's embellishing things as you do when you tell stories. So having that device sort of allowed me to get everything that was great about, the 6 or 7 year span, Cabbage Patch Kids, baseball cards, all those things that have actual hard dates stamped to them. Using this unreliable narrator, allows this story to have all those things and feel like they all happened at the same time, which was helpful.
What do you remember from that winter? What is the Kevin story like? What, and by the way, the audience, they love you. Bolt T says, congrats, Kevin. Like,
hey, thanks, man.
Like I said, like a Geekscape found the old episode. I was like, yeah, Jonathan, you dumb. Like, he's totally been on the show, and it's he's a good dude. Kevin, what part of Christmas 86 do you remember? Or maybe it was 87 when you finally got
to be honest, like I can't remember if it was 87 or 88. And my memory is like, really, to be honest, like, it's one thing I am good at is I have a good memory for childhood, so I can weave all that, but I can't remember if it's 87 or 88. I'm sure I could find out. But what I remember, and a lot of this, worked its way into the movie. This movie really is a love letter to my childhood. It's based loosely on my family and my friends growing up and the town that I live in. It's set in Batavia, Illinois, which is the town that I'm from. So what I remember,
suburb of Chicago?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So the Christmas Story definitely rings true on that.
Yeah,
Wow. And obviously all the Shermer, Illinois films.
Yeah,
you have all those films. You've got Home Alone. They don't just celebrate Christmas year round where you're from, because it seems like that entire part.
No,
it seems like that those suburbs of Chicago are just stuck in a snow globe, from what I can tell.
We're just there's Santas everywhere. But I mean, like, John Hughes was another big idol of mine growing up. I mean, I joke that Home Alone was just made for me. I'm from Chicago. My name's Kevin. I was exactly the same age. Like, all of those things I saw that twice in the theater when I was 9 or
You're the
10 or
reason it went
whatever.
to like. You're the reason it cracked the top 10 all-time box
Yeah,
office when it
right,
came out.
right. But what I remember about that time, what I think really helped formulate the story was that I think we forget that there was always one kid who got it first before
Yes.
everyone. And so it was just this thing of like, and I remember my best friend lived next door to that kid. And like, you got to get there before too many kids are there so that he'll be like, listen, I can only let 4 friends in at a time to play it or whatever. And like, so that went into the script. And now it's this spaz rich kid who has the first Nintendo and he lords it over everybody. So I remember that. And I remember just all of us just really, really wanting it. If you're lucky enough to get it, it was just like the best day of your life.
It was the first time I think that I remembered something that we'd see later several times. I remember Power Rangers had the Christmas shortage. The Geekscapists have witnessed me camp out for the Wii. I know that the other one that had the big shortage, Power Rangers did the Furbies, stuff like that. But the Nintendo, you're right, was one of those things that one kid gets in the neighborhood and he's instantly popular.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was I shared a back fence with that kid, and his parents would get him every game. And these games were $50-$60, and even the crap games where you're like, this is a bad game, you would still play it. What were the games that you remember were the
Yeah.
ones that you were like, this made me a video game player for life?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, that cartridge was just, that was so cool. It's Mario Brothers, just the idea of like getting to new levels. Like the first time you got to see the underwater level in Mario Brothers, you're like, oh my God. This
And
looks
not
like
in arcades.
looks like real life. Yeah.
Even in arcades, you had pretty much like plate map based levels where maybe on like a Gradius or something, you would see the progression of a level. But for most of those, like the Pac-Mans and the Donkey Kongs and stuff like that, you're basically, you see the map immediately and you're playing just within that contained map. You're right, the first time beyond Pitfall, but Pitfall's blocky and Pitfall was kind of a little bit of a generation before us. This was the first time that it was our generation and we really started to see a world like open up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just, there's so much imagination behind that, as a kid and, wanting to get better so you could just see what happens next, and that's kind of a revelation to us.
I just heard this factoid, and I heard it at the age of 42. Player 2 controls the ducks. Is that true?
I can't believe that.
What is this?
I can't believe that either. I think Seth Rogen tweeted that or something, and like somebody told me that, and I was like, "What are you talking?" Because I mean, I have a movie coming out about this, and they're like, "You'll know this," and I'm like, "No." Well, you make me feel better. I'm glad you didn't know either.
I read that maybe a week or two ago that it was like, hey, I'm going to blow your mind. When you're a kid, obviously the kid with the light gun controls the gun. Player 2 can control the ducks.
That can't be.
I was like, no way. What are you talking about?
Someone's got to. I should test it.
Yeah. All I know is that when you're playing track and field, there's no way you use your feet. There's no way you use your feet. You got on your knees and you slammed that thing because otherwise it was too damn. Like, come on. Who actually played track on that track and field? Half those things didn't work.
No. And that's one really fun thing without spoiling the movie that we get into, the Power Glove, like all that stuff. We have a lot of fun with that because they look cool and they were awesome, but Power Glove didn't work.
Power Glove didn't work. Bold T. Now, I think we popped something in his head because now he's just like going off on Nintendo games that he liked. He's saying River City Ransom, Super Spike Volleyball, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, Metroid, Ice Hockey, Jackal. Let's go. Oh, Jackal was like, was the one where you're in a Jeep? Or is that the one where that's when you're in a Jeep?
Yeah, you're like a little tank.
Jackal was great. I did like the Gunsmoke game. I like some of those. I like Ikari Warriors, those ones that were kind of like bottom up and you're kind of scrolling upward. I always thought those were unique, except the X-Men game, which stunk hard. Remember the X-Men?
I don't remember that.
I'm not talking about the Wolverine game because the Wolverine game was a platformer and it was okay. It wasn't great. The best Marvel adaptation on the NES was Captain America and the Avengers, where you could play Captain America, Hawkeye, and then like Vision and Iron Man could come in and help you out. But the original X-Men game, which was bottom up, that game stunk hard. It was no good. And sometimes you just buy a game because you thought it was awesome looking, and you get it, and it's not so great.
Right. But even just the like exploration, or just like the sense of adventure of like having a new game, or I remember I got a game.
You don't give up on them.
No, yeah. You just and to see something that you never. It's like buying an album or watch.
I miss liner notes. Yeah, I miss sitting there with the liner notes, trying to figure out what the hell they're doing. Bold T did say LJN ruined my X-Men video game happiness for life. Yeah, LJN was a toy company that put its hand in video games, and it just didn't really work. Again, going back, like what were the big ones? You said Mario Brothers. You said the Duck Hunt.
Yep. I loved RBI baseball. That was a big one for me. And I liked ice hockey more. That there was just a hockey game, less that it was. I guess it was fun. I love ice hockey for sure. Contra. I liked Contra. I
gotta love Contra.
Yeah. And Punch Out. I mean, you gotta go with Punch Out. I liked Mega Man too. I was never very good.
Mega Man's actually a pretty grueling game.
Yeah. My cousin could beat it. I remember we stayed up all night once, and
Mega Man's rough. And when you first got like Super Mario Brothers 2, and you were expecting the mechanics to be similar to Super Mario Brothers 1, and they just weren't.
Yeah.
And you're playing that, I guess it's Toki Toki Panic is really the truth about that game. It was a game that was shoveled into being a Mario game, but the mechanics were so different that you're playing this thing. And I just remember like trying to ride that thing across the level towards the end, late stages, and just thinking Super Mario 2 was so weird. I wish some of those characters, like the villainous frog at the end, would still show up somewhere in the Mario. I think that's Mario canon now. You got to play it. That's Mario canon. If you can include all those other ones, you can include that. For me, I think playing that second Goonies game was such an improvement over that first Goonies that you were like, see, it didn't stink. The Goonies was great. And trying to figure out what the heck you were doing in Friday the 13th.
Oh, wow.
The Friday the 13th game, they just didn't care. They were like, we're going to make a bunch of games based on murder properties. Hey, kids, come play this Nightmare on Elm Street game. Come play this Friday the 13th game. And you're just trying to play it like, what should I be doing? I don't know. Yeah. Jason's just randomly showing up and killing me. And then I play as another camper. And that happened. Those are big memories. So beyond the games, I think the important thing with the NES as explored in this movie, 8-Bit Christmas, like you said, is that social thing that it creates for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the games back then. It was about what
hanging out.
The relationships represented. What were some of like the big moments for you where a life moment, or maybe a lifelong friend you made through the wonderful world of melting your brain in video games?
Yeah, there's lots. I'm very fortunate. I have the same best friends that I've had since kindergarten. Like, they're still my best friends. And so a lot of them, we grew up playing sports, playing video games. And I remember having like an RBI baseball tournament one summer, just in the basement. Like, somebody's mom had like a swear jar down there because we were getting so mad and swearing.
She brought it. She came and installed it mid-game. She's like, I'm sick and tired of hearing y'all do this. I'm going to profit off of this.
That was great. In somebody's unfinished basement there's no air conditioning, but the basement's a little bit cooler in the summer. And
it's got like carpet on the walls and
stuff.
Paneling. Paneling was huge.
Paneling was good.
That like
too.
paneling was big in the 80s. Like if you knew that if that thing had like fake wood paneling, you know what I mean? Like if that basement had a Nintendo and fake wood paneling in there,
you're gold.
You're rocking out.
Yeah.
And that couch was weird.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta have a weird couch down there. Wow, that's great.
Super nostalgic.
Yeah, and just like sleepovers and things like that. I mean, just all that stuff, and having a friend who would get a new game. Or I actually had one friend who his parents never let him get a Nintendo.
Ever.
And the first thing that he did when he got to college, 10 years, 12 years later, whatever, was buy a Nintendo.
An 8-bit Nintendo.
An original one.
He's like, I got some catching up to do.
I got some catching up to do.
He didn't know that. I mean, by that time there's emulators, but he's like, no.
Nope,
I need to be able to
taste it. I want the real thing. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bold T, he's loving this conversation. He's over on Twitch, and he says, my teacher once asked the class, what is the hardest thing they've ever had to do? And my answer was to beat Dr. Wily in Mega Man 2. When she asked how I did it, I just said bubbles. I was so dumb. No, you weren't dumb.
That's
you were
great.
champ. You were
was hard to do. Yeah, that I certainly never was able to beat Mega Man 2.
I think Rygar was the one. With Rygar, it was the one where there was no like code or save state in the game, and what I liked about Rygar was it was a side-scrolling platformer, and then you got into a little bit of a top-down trenches exploration area, and once you go into a cave in that area, you are then back into the side-scrolling aspect of it. And remember those like balloons on the end of like strings that you just bounce back and forth like a yo-yo, and you just pop them up and off your palm? That was like the weapon in Rygar.
Weird.
It felt like a giant thing that that you were just kind of throwing back and forth. And obviously there was Bionic Commando and stuff like that, but I always had a soft spot for Rygar as far as 8-bit goes, because it had a cool fantasy world. It felt a little bit darker than something else.
Cool.
It was fun. There was always the kid, and we're going to talk about this kid, who was a Sega kid. Unapologetically.
Right.
And he had a superiority complex on being different. Did you have that kid in your neighborhood? I think every neighborhood had you're a Nintendo person, I'm a Sega Master System kid.
I mean, because like Nintendo 87, 88, 89, like I don't remember even seeing a Sega. Like I don't even remember that being a thing anywhere. Like for me, at least in my neighborhood. It wasn't until
we ran them out.
Yeah, you don't belong here.
It is a Nintendo town, boy. Don't come in here with that.
Did you have a Sega guy, or were you the Sega guy?
No, it wasn't the Sega guy, but I did like the Sega stuff because Sega, for some reason, they felt like the colors were richer.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
David Level, my neighbor one block over, was a Sega guy, and I would go over there, and he was also the only Atari person too. Like we didn't have an Atari. We had I think the Magnavox Odyssey or whatever the Atari type clone was. Like we didn't have Pac-Man. We had a game where you're a mouse instead of Pac-Man. Like it is a lawsuit. You're a mouse instead of Pac-Man, and the ghosts are cats. And then getting what the equivalent of the power pellet does turns the mouse into a dog. So that power pellet has some level of like radioactive something, because suddenly this mouse is turning into a dog. Like it was probably like a fucking John Carpenter sequence. Like that thing turns into the thing, and now it's eating cats and killing them. But that was the Pac-Man clone that I remember playing. That was my first video game. Was whatever that game was. It was a Pac-Man clone, and I remember we loved Nintendo. We had the Nintendo. I wasn't great at it. It wasn't until the Game Boy that I really like had a system of my own. The Game Boy was the system, my first real system. I didn't have to share it with my brothers. I'm playing this thing, got addicted to Tetris, went nuts on Tetris and Super Mario Land and all those games. And then, but David Level was the guy who had the Sega Master System, and the colors were rich. You ended up playing games like Space Harrier, which blew my mind. I think I think Shane O'Hare was talking on Geekscape Games about a game on the original Master System that was ported from the arcade, where it felt like an alien clone, and there were alien looking aliens walking around the level, and you can play as a male human, female human, or a duck headed creature.
Wait, was that
they could not figure it out over at Geekscape Games. So if you're able to crack this code, or
is that a game called Xenophobe?
I thought it was Xenophobe, because in Xenophobe you can go into the tubes and change levels. You can go up and down into different levels, and it's a side scroller, right? I thought I wanted to say it's Xenophobe.
Because for some bizarre, like I wasn't that cool in terms of like knowing lots of games or like having or like testing them out. I was pretty like tried and true, and my grandma somehow got me this game called Xenophobe, and none of us had ever seen it, and we put it in, and I didn't think it was good. No one thought it was any good.
I don't think
Xenophobe.
it's good. I think
Yeah.
Xenophobe got sold on the idea that it was like a massive alien ripoff because
Right.
dude, it's straight up Xenophobe. So so Shane O'Hare, I had to tell you, I like to listen to the podcast on the network when I go jogging, and sometimes I'll find myself in a public park or on the street, and I'll suddenly start yelling words out loud in response to the Geekscapists. And
Yeah.
I definitely last week was listening to Geekscape Games, and Shane is describing Xenophobe, and I'm yelling Xenophobe out loud, and there are
It's
people
xenophobe.
around.
Yeah.
Xenophobe, and they're like,
Oh, it's
this
that guy
guy's
again. Yeah.
nuts. But yes,
The yeller.
Shane, the game is Xenophobe. It was not good. It was sold on the fact that it was an alien looking clone. And I'm glad but it was a co-op. It was a game that you could play with your friends, so that helps. And it was and I think it went to Sega first. When it left
That's
arcades, it went to
interesting.
Sega
Yeah.
first.
That's interesting because it was definitely on Nintendo, but yeah, Xenophobe. I'll still, my buddies will still make fun of me having that game because of how bad it was.
Well, you just have to adapt it, and you'll laugh all the way.
Sure. Yeah, I'll laugh my way to a major motion picture. That'd be great.
Leads me to a question. Knowing that you're the 8-bit Christmas guy, and you were allowed to write the script, you wrote it on spec though. Was that scary as hell to like put up?
No, anything that I've ever written that's been any good or gotten made has been just doing it on spec. Because when you're doing it on spec, you're just like
all in.
Forget everybody else. You just write it for yourself. And to me, that's the best way to do it. So yeah, I mean, a little scary, I guess, because I'm spending 6 months of my life on this and not getting paid. So that's always scary. I mean, luckily I'm working on, I think at the time I was doing a pilot for Disney or something at the time, but that's always scary, but it was good. It had been long enough since I wrote the book that I was able to just not be precious about anything that was in it and step out and just like, I knew the story enough in my head that I didn't have to reference the book. And that allowed me to be like, oh, well, I don't need that part. I don't need those chapters. I don't need that through line because it doesn't work for the movie. And I've already written it in this book. So I have that thing that exists already. I have those scenes that I think are funny. So I don't need to be precious about them because they already exist and I don't need them in the story. So it was very easy to just like cut lots of things from the book that didn't fit in the movie.
Do you find yourself doing a little George R. R. Martining where when you adapt it to the screen, you're doing a little bit of course correction on any moments or trying to do any of that?
No, that exactly. And I think as you're writing it, you don't really think about that, but ultimately that's exactly what you're doing. It's just making it better. And this, you just, the more you write, the better you get, the older you get, you just become ultimately a better writer, I think,
until your brain starts to go.
Until your brain starts to go. You got to do it before
I had to cut 10 pages out of a script, and the agency we're working with the actors, we want to hit a certain budget number, and they're like, Jonathan, like this script honestly has to go down by 15 pages, and then there was a silence on the phone, like they were worried I was gonna be like, absolutely not.
Absolutely. And you're like, okay.
And I was like, yeah, and I know where they're gonna come from. The truth is, when I was writing the script, the many times I've written the script, I knew it had to be shorter. I knew we had to get to it quicker. I can't out loud say this to you guys, but I couldn't figure out the puzzle to do it. But at that point, the last time I touched the script was January, February. We'd attached an actor and they had notes, and that was great. And I didn't touch it again until 2 weeks ago. And those months, like you said, those 10 months, I was like, oh, I'm chainsawing this. Like, this is easy. Like, I don't think you should be, you can't be precious when other people are involved. If you want to be precious, go write yourself a diary.
Yeah, no, totally. Or a book.
Were you precious with the diary that is 8-Bit Christmas, the novelization?
I think I was, because I always just knew that, this was, you're flexing a different creative muscle. And with a book, you just have so much more room. A film, rightly so, has to be a certain amount of time, but I had, I think as working as a screenwriter and a TV writer allowed me to, have that muscle memory of knowing how to structure a book to a certain extent. But then the book gave me the flexibility to, go off on little tangents or whatever. But I think, and as I'm sure it's just when it's feeling right and when it's working, like, it's great. And that was, the whole book was just like that. Like, every day it was just fun.
How many, what did you start with? On the book, and I've been asked about doing a book. I've been asked about this and that. I don't think it would be a fiction book. I don't think I have that. I think it would be a nonfiction something. I don't know. Maybe something funny, or a lot of podcasters take transcriptions of their podcasts and they work that into a book. I don't think I want it. I don't think a lot of people want to be like, oh, what did Jonathan think of the MCU? Who cares? But have had guests on here that drop knowledge, and I would be kind of open to be like that one time, like, we had a great piece of knowledge about storytelling from this person or from that person. It wouldn't have come from me.
That'd be great.
I think it would be fun. So I think something like nonfiction, but I just have to find somebody who'll help me with the transcription. I would pay for a massive transcription, and then we would just look for those needles in the haystack. But ultimately, with a book, did you start with an outline, knowing that there's a level of diary to it, Dear Diary or memoir to 8-Bit Christmas? What was your process of building? Did you carve down, or did you build out? Or at one point did you build out and then find a way to carve down? Maybe the screenplay was carving down.
I think the only piece of screenwriting advice or writing advice that ever has made sense to me, or that I would ever give, is that you kind of just have to know your ending. So as soon as I knew kind of what my ending was and how, and I won't spoil it, but how that would work, then I had a goal and I could get to there. And at least for the novel, I had these characters for sure. I had this kid, Jake Doyle, and his little sister who was way smarter than him, and his parents, his dad who just wants him to play outside, and his mom who's this overworked teacher, because they're all loosely based on my own family. And then you have these friends in this town, and there were some plot points and things that once I got to that could give it a motor. For instance, the big thing that happens in this is that this rich kid, Timmy Keene, was the only kid with a Nintendo in town. He makes kids give him gifts to let him into his house to play. And well, he gets so mad playing Kung Fu that he jump kicks his own TV. It falls on his little annoying dog and crushes the dog.
Oh my God, that's a risk.
It's a risk. It's
killed a dog in a film.
Taking a risk. Just watch the movie.
Taking a risk. Big Geeks just yelled out, "Oh, Doyle rules," which has a little bit of a Doyle in that character. Perhaps I was thinking more like Francis in
yes.
in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Sort of this ADD kid before we knew what ADD was.
Sure.
Anyway, the town goes crazy because they blame video game violence for this horrible dog crushing incident, and they ban video games. They ban Nintendo for Christmas. So that gave the kids, some kind of conflict, something to work up against. And then that comes out that there's a wreath selling contest for the Cub Scouts, and the grand prize is a Nintendo. And so that gave it a motor. That gave it somewhere to go. Like, these kids now have a way to get their Nintendo. And so figuring out those little elements helped a lot. And I think somehow I just,
and that was your outline.
That was pretty close to the outline.
You're putting that in your outline, or are you putting that on cue cards? You're putting that in an outline.
I think I just wrote a bunch of notes.
I don't do the cue card thing. Like, I sometimes I'll put it up on a wall, but I'll just be like, everything gets too mushy. And I'm like, what I do that sequence approach where I'm like, let me put the big pieces. And I know what has to happen in each sequence, which is just a broken down version of a Save the Cat anyway. And then as soon as I'm ready to put it into a final draft or into a screenwriting software, I erase all the big sectional divisions, giving the script a chance to become fluid.
Oh, cool.
And so that the remnants of the 3-act structures and the sequences are there, but I give the script permission to fatten or tighten in some areas to breathe a little. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Because you have to, that's where you find all the comedy, or that's where you find the characters. Like, you just need some room. Like, a joke at the start of the scene, whether it stays or not, will help you understand that character. And you need sort of that fluidity to be able to do that. Like if you're too rigid, at least I find,
Right.
if it's too mapped out, you set yourself up to you're just trying to hit this thing, and you're trying to put yourself in a box. And
it's a little Mad Libsy.
Yeah.
And if the places where I concentrate on characters is like entrances and exits. Like Bugs Bunny does not enter or exit a room the same way that the Tasmanian Devil does.
Sure.
Jerry does not enter or exit a room the same way that Kramer does. So if you're thinking, especially now with like the concentration on diversity or the concentration on like open casting choices like Hollywood does, I just saw that Ghostbusters Afterlife. I thought it was phenomenal. I love that movie to death. I think you should see it as a man.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah.
Loves the 80s. It is such a love letter to so many things, including our the original Ghostbusters films, but it's a really strong movie, and it was so well written. But I think about just how strong, if you can define how uniquely a character enters or exits a scene, then like you said, like you immediately know that person, and it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with image. It has nothing to do with the beauty of the character. I'm horrified by that. Like you're gonna end up writing something that ends up as like a Twitter thread, like a Twitter account. You know that Twitter account where there was like a bunch of screenplay examples of how women were introduced in scripts. Do you remember that Twitter account?
No,
that was
I don't,
like,
no.
She's hot but doesn't know it. Like you've read like so many bad descriptions of characters that are based on like real, like kind of sexist or like really lame stereotypical stuff. And so I was like, okay, Jonathan, if you can just concentrate on how a character enters or exits a scene, or how we first see them, and then how they're wearing, either what they're wearing or how they're keeping themselves, then we know whether that character is an uptight, or that character's loose, or that character's fun, or that character's fast, or that character's in a hurry, or that character's chilling, or that character is serious, or that character, you know what I mean? Like these are all things that will also educate an actor's performance. You know,
that makes sense.
And if you kind of just sticking to that stuff, because I was so scared that like you're gonna write something so bad that it ends up on that freaking it gets a Twitter account of its own. Like, like it's really, I'm petrified by it. I don't know.
That's
There's little tricks I give myself. Like
you have to. Yeah, it's a good one. I like that.
And so when you were a kid and you killed this dog,
that never happened. None of that ever happened.
No, you know it was coming.
Yeah,
you knew Jonathan was going to be a jerk about that. You have a kid now.
I do. I have two.
You have two kids now.
I do. Yeah.
And you did not get them by somebody spilling water on you.
No, I did not.
I don't know how this happens. I don't have a kid. I don't know how they are made. But you have kids. And did you have them when you were on Geekscape the first time?
No.
Yeah.
I think I was writing for School of Rock then, so we didn't have my daughter. That's how long this process has been to make this movie. My first phone call with the producers that I mentioned, Jonathan and Nick, was supposed to be January 19th of 2018, but my daughter was born that morning. So we didn't have the call. I had it a few weeks later, but my daughter's going to be 4 in January.
Wow.
So like that's how
that's
long
your eldest daughter. Yeah.
Yes. And just of the producers of this movie, I think there's been 4 kids born during trying to make this movie. Like it's crazy just how long it's taken. It's really been crazy.
How much did fatherhood or impending fatherhood, how much of that did you start because you wrote this movie as someone who did not have kids about being a kid. Or you wrote the book as someone who didn't have kids about being a kid.
Right.
Then it's now you're approaching the movie, and yes, you already probably had this framing device of the father narrator coming in. How much did the feelings and personal things that you were going through then seep into that movie? Because I saw the trailer and I found it to be very sincere.
Well, thanks.
I mean, it would have been very easy to discard this thing as like, oh, they're just doing like a Hallmark version with Princess Bride framing device, and it's Hallmarky, and so no, there's
And
something
believe me, I
about this
know that
movie.
that's coming. Like I will get that no matter what. Like I'm debating whether to just have my phone off or on Thanksgiving.
You really think that somebody's going to compare this to a Hallmark movie?
Oh, I don't know. I just know it's never. I'm super proud of this movie. I think it's going to do great. Like if you like the trailer, the movie's 10 times even better.
Okay. And we have a show here on the network called Christmas 365 where they just talk about Christmas literally around the like,
wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
I've wanted to cancel it for a long time, but I don't know what Matt Kelly would do if I canceled that show. He'd be despondent. He loves Christmas so much.
I love Christmas too. I mean, that's a big reason I wrote I just love thinking about it. I love thinking about Christmas. I love Christmas. I'm excited to go back to Chicago to see my family for Christmas in a few weeks. To answer your question,
did impending fatherhood seep into this rewrite?
Yes, I think so. It has to. My daughter and my son are 1 and 3, so I mean, it's hard to. The daughter in this movie is 10, so it's a little different, but it does it matters, and I think one of the things that you'll get from this movie is, the realization as an adult of what your parents did for you, and how it's not until you're an adult that you realize just what they went through for you, and how they helped you and how they helped try to give you good Christmases, and how ultimately that Nintendo doesn't matter.
Don't spoil the movie. Did you have a good relationship with your parents? And were there Christmases that you were disappointed by? That like, were there lessons that you learned where you're like, I did not get that gift?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think those are good life lessons, and I'm still very close with my folks and my sister. They were all out there was an LA screening of the movie just on Saturday, so they were all here for that, and it was a dream come true to have them out here to see that. And but I mean, in writing the book and the movie, you think back to your folks and kind of the lessons that they taught you, and just what it took to try to give you a good Christmas, because that was sometimes hard.
Did your family members, when they saw this movie screening, the premiere, do they recognize themselves in the characters on screen? Do they have any beef with some of that?
Yeah,
because I mean, we all write our family and our
right,
friends into our films.
Yeah, I mean, but at this point, they're pretty used to it. I did a show called Play by Play before this, 3 seasons of that, and the folks in that were loosely based on my parents too, and so I mean, they get it, and but I think both my parents. I mean, Steve Zahn plays the dad in the movie, and I think my dad got a kick out of that. I think Steve really related to that character, and the character is constant. The house is constantly under construction because he's just like redoing the house, which is exactly what my dad did. Our house was just always under construction. Like
that's why you had that drywall.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Why you had that drywall.
Exactly. Like if I smell sawdust, like I'm a kid. Like I'm just like a child again. Like that's what I relate sawdust to. So my dad got a big kick out of that, and June Diane Raphael, who played the mom, her mom was a teacher and my mom was a teacher, and so I think they both kind of related to that, and I think they got a kick out of it. I hope so anyway. I hope they're not upset with it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, and you play. I mean, these are sweet movies. This is a love letter movie.
Yeah. I hope so, without being sappy. I mean, that's the trick, right? Like you don't want to be sappy, and I think that this threads that needle quite well. So I'm happy about that.
I'm finishing a Geekscape. So I'm finishing the next Geekscape short. It's a 9-minute short, but it's based on my mom.
Oh, cool.
And she's doing artwork for the beginning. The artwork has a little animated opening, and then the end credits have an animated image that kind of rises. And so my mom's a painter, and so I wanted her involved in that artwork. And so I showed it to her, and halfway through the movie, she's like, "Juanito, she took her like me."
Like, yeah, Mom.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, about that, Mom." Yeah, there's 2 actors in the movie and a live rat, and it's really this woman and a rat the entire movie. And yeah, it's you, Mom. It's you. And she's like, I do not talk like that, do I? And I didn't pause it. The woman continues, the actress continues to talk
You're
like
like,
my
Mom.
mom. And I was like, Mom, yes, you talk like that.
Yeah.
You have been in this country longer than I've been alive, and somehow your Mexico, your accent from Guadalajara is still, come on.
You gotta keep that accent.
You gotta keep. I mean, she just, I don't know what's up, but I love my
That's
mom.
cool.
It was easy enough to write that character.
Yeah.
But it's dangerous. I wrote my father into the film we shot in Brazil a few years ago, and that movie's a bit more of a drama and a bit more of like a love letter. I don't think my dad's seen that movie. And
really, what's it called?
That movie's called Course How the Cowboy. It's a Heart of the Cowboy. It's a country music film, but at the beginning it does have an accident, and it replicates the accident that I had an older brother who was killed in a car accident, and I think that, and I told my dad, I had a pretty insane experience on that set. Or I was there. It's another director's set, so I didn't have a whole lot to do. So I actually started writing another movie, and as I'm stepping off set, no, you don't want me on a set. You don't. There's nothing I can do if I'm not directing and I can barely do that. You don't want me on there.
It's tricky. Yeah, I know.
And
I'm
stepping off this set at Gee's movie, and if you Geekscape has visited us at Comic-Con, you know Gee. He hangs out with he's filming another movie, right? They just wrapped today. Congratulations, Gee. They just shot another movie in Sao Paulo. And I'm walking out of this set. I don't know if I've told this story on Geekscape. I'm writing this movie, and I was going through my separation. This is 2016, a year after meeting Kevin. And I'm in just outside Sao Paulo, and we're shooting this movie, and there's a scene where these young kids are going to get in a fight. One of them is going to storm off in a car, and he ultimately dies. And later on, the movie flash forwards 10, 15 years later, and one of them is a famous musician, but he got his fame by playing his brother's songs, and he's out of songs, and now he has to kind of have a little bit of a Jerry Maguire come to Jesus, who am I moment. It's a nice drama. It's really beautiful.
Sounds great.
The music is phenomenal in this movie. I don't know if you can find it digitally outside of Brazil or not, but it's done great in Brazil.
Awesome.
And so I'm on set, and I'm like, let me get out of here. I'm just underfoot this whole time. And I walk out of the location downstairs, and the kids are doing their argument scene, so one of them can storm off. And I walk out, and my older brother's car that he died in is sitting in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
And I go, whoa, whose car is that? And somebody goes, that's the car that the brother drives in the scene. And I go, what? Because I sure as hell didn't write that into the film.
Wow.
And I turned, Guy shakes loose, and I go, hey, Guy, that's the picture car for the accident? And he goes, yeah. And I go, Guy, it's a different color, but that's the 1970s VW Bug that my brother had in his accident that this scene is based on. And he goes, do you want me to change it? No, I don't. It was
wow.
Yeah, no. These things, as it come to arrest me, these things are serendipitous. These things happen. Like when you make art, when you tell stories from yourself, like these things happen. And and that scene is in the movie. And
that's a great story.
I think that's why my father hasn't seen the film. It's just because
that would be tough.
Yeah, he doesn't want to see that sequence. It's a rough sequence, but it is the movie that I wrote that's what Guy and I wrote based on a little story, based on the thing that happened. But he'll watch the next one.
I'll check that out. That sounds great.
Well, Kevin, listen, your movie comes first. And Geekscapists, this is what you got to do. You got to watch this 8-Bit Christmas. It's coming out this Wednesday, November 24th on HBOMax. If you're listening to this episode late, you still got the HBOMax. You got to go you got to go watch it. I hope it stays on HBO Max. I get worried a little bit with the HBO Max because they'll do this thing where they'll release like the Suicide Squad or Dune, but it's a limited window, or they'll bring back like the Tim Burton Batman movies, but it's a limited window, and then they figure it out. And like, I think that's to help their Blu-ray sales or something.
I don't know. This definitely will. Like this was before, and I don't need to get into the whole studio thing, but this will, because it's essentially an HBO Max original. It's a New Line film, but New Line absorbed HBO Max. It's not going anywhere. It'll be on HBO Max forever.
Okay, so it definitely will be there through Christmas, Geekscapists. And that, I'm just saying, if you watch this for St. Patrick's Day, you're weird. That's all I wanted to say. If you're like, I'm going to roll up on St. Patty's Day, or you know what, kids, it's Easter. Let's get around and let's watch this Christmas
Halloween
movie.
time
No, it's
means
fine.
8-bit Christmas.
Watch this movie whenever the heck you want. All right, Geekscapists. But the main point is, you watch this movie. It's on HBO Max this week, November 24th. You're gonna watch. It's got Neil Patrick Harris, Steve Zahn, and our good buddy Kevin wrote it, based on his book. This is, dude, it's so cool to have you back here. And
Thanks so much for having me. It's
like,
great to talk to you.
You've returned successfully.
Sure. Not bad.
Okay.
Not
It's
bad.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Geekscapists, I want to remind you one last time that we're doing a live show here in Hollywood, December 17th. It's gonna be fun, or it's gonna be a complete disaster. Either way, you're not gonna want to miss it. If you're in LA, give us some. You could come get your tickets. tinyurl.com/geekscape15. If you're not in LA, well, you should probably just subscribe to this feed, because it's the last hour of our 15-hour live stream, so you're going to end up watching it. It's going to be a lot more fun in person. We've got gifts to give away from a lot of partners. We got Skybound Entertainment giving some stuff away, so there will be free prizes and things like that, and some celebrity guests that maybe you'll be able to meet them in person. It's a 65-seat theater. Like, where are they going to go? There's nowhere for them to hide. Like, if you'll be able to walk right up to them and be like, hey, I loved you on Geekscape, or whatever. You should host Geekscape yourself. Whatever you want to tell them. It's the 15th anniversary surprise show. It's going to be a lot of fun. And keep your eyes peeled for that stream coming up on the 17th. And I think we have a Mario Kart tournament on this channel coming up this Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. I don't think I have the time to take part, but some of the Geekscapists are going to be playing Mario Kart right here on this channel. So keep subscribing to our Twitch channel, and keep telling your friends about Geekscape. And again, tell your friends about 8-Bit Christmas. It's out on HBO Max this week. Kevin, thank you so much, brother.
Thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. Really, really enjoyed talking to you, man.
I hope you've enjoyed your Geekscape.
I have.
Geekscapists, tell your friends about us, and over and out. Don't hate, create, okay? Peace. And then I